Welcome to Smart Reads in Minutes. Today, we're diving into How to Raise a Healthy Gamer by Dr. Alok Kanojia with a detailed chapter-by-chapter summary. Let's get started. Introduction. The introduction sets the stage by acknowledging the deep concern parents feel when their children become overly immersed in video games. Dr. Alok Kanojia, aka Dr. K, a psychiatrist specializing in gaming addiction, opens with a relatable narrative. Parents watch their children grow, nurture them through childhood, and instill values in them, only to see them change dramatically as gaming takes hold. The once affectionate, engaged, and bright child begins to exhibit mood swings, irritation, and outright defiance. The simple act of calling them down for dinner or asking them to do chores leads to emotional outbursts. This shift in behavior feels almost like watching a personality transformation, leaving parents frustrated and confused. Dr. K frames this issue as a rapidly evolving crisis. Unlike previous generations, where television had limited hours and parental controls were straightforward, video games present an entirely new challenge. The pace at which technology has developed far outstrips society's ability to adapt, leaving parents at a loss. Unlike traditional forms of entertainment, video games are interactive, immersive, and socially reinforcing, making them difficult to control. This book aims to help parents navigate the complex world of gaming addiction by breaking down why video games are so compelling, what needs they fulfill in children, and how parents can engage with their children in a productive way rather than resorting to power struggles. The core message is that gaming is not just about screens, it's about human needs, neuroscience, and the modern social landscape. Dr. K assures parents that the goal is not to take gaming away entirely, but to understand its role in their children's lives. By doing so, they can guide their children toward a healthier relationship with gaming without severing the connection between parent and child. The introduction ends with an encouragement. Parents are not alone in this struggle, and with the right approach, they can bring balance back to their homes. Chapter 1. What makes video games so addictive? The neurochemistry of gaming explained. This chapter begins with a question that haunts many parents. Is my child actually addicted to video games? Dr. K addresses this concern by explaining that addiction is not just about substances like drugs or alcohol. Behavioral addictions, such as gaming addiction, can disrupt lives in similar ways. The World Health Organization, WHO, has classified internet gaming disorder as a condition, yet debates continue about whether gaming can be considered a true addiction. However, from a practical standpoint, Dr. K argues that the label doesn't matter. If gaming is causing significant issues in a child's life, declining grades, social isolation, mood swings, and conflicts at home, then it is a problem that needs to be addressed. The chapter delves into the neuroscience behind video game addiction, explaining how video games interact with the brain's reward system. When playing games, children experience dopamine surges, which create feelings of excitement, accomplishment, and pleasure. This reward system is similar to what happens with substance use. Gaming activates the brain's pleasure centers in ways that are both intense and repetitive. Over time, the brain adapts to these high levels of stimulation by reducing the number of dopamine receptors, leading to tolerance. As a result, players need to game more and more to achieve the same level of satisfaction, which explains why they resist stopping even when they know they should. Game developers deliberately design games to maximize engagement. They use a careful balance of challenge and reward to keep players hooked, much like slot machines in casinos. Games provide unpredictable rewards, like loot boxes or rare achievements, which keep players constantly chasing the next hit of excitement. Furthermore, games suppress negative emotions by shutting down the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and anxiety. This means that when children play video games, they are not just seeking fun. They are often escaping real-life stressors like school pressures, social anxieties, or family conflicts. The chapter concludes by reinforcing that gaming addiction is not just about willpower, it is deeply rooted in brain chemistry. Understanding the neurochemical mechanisms behind gaming can help parents approach the issue with empathy rather than frustration. The goal is not to demonize gaming, but to create awareness of its addictive properties so that parents can guide their children toward a healthier relationship with technology. Chapter 2. Why are our kids so obsessed? How gaming meets psychological needs. Dr. K shifts from neuroscience to psychology in this chapter, exploring why video games captivate children so intensely. He argues that gaming is not merely a source of entertainment, but a tool that fulfills fundamental psychological needs. While generations past found fulfillment in real-world achievements, modern children often struggle to meet their psychological needs through traditional means. Video games, however, provide a structured system that offers rewards, validation, and social engagement. One of the core needs that gaming satisfies is challenge and achievement. Humans are naturally wired to seek and overcome challenges. This instinct, called intent to mastery, is what drives people to push through difficulties and achieve goals. In the past, this drive was channeled into sports, academics, and hobbies. However, in the digital age, video games provide a shortcut to achievement. Unlike school, where progress is slow and effort doesn't always lead to success, video games are designed to be engaging, offering immediate feedback, skill progression, and a sense of triumph. Another key psychological need that games address is identity formation. Adolescence is a time of self-discovery, and many children struggle with self-esteem, social labels, or bullying. Video games allow them to escape these challenges by creating new identities. In a game, they are not defined by their physical appearance, social status, or academic performance. They can be heroes, leaders, or champions, receiving admiration from their peers in the gaming community. Community and belonging are also major factors in gaming's appeal. Many children feel more connected to their online gaming friends than to their real-life classmates. The digital world offers a space where they can communicate, collaborate, and feel accepted. Unlike school environments, where social hierarchies can be rigid, online communities provide a sense of equality and camaraderie. This is particularly appealing for children who feel out of place in traditional social settings. The chapter concludes by emphasizing that children's attachment to gaming is not irrational. It is deeply tied to their psychological needs, which are not always met in the real world. Simply removing games without addressing the underlying needs can create resentment and further alienation. Instead, parents need to find alternative ways to fulfill these needs, guiding their children toward balanced and meaningful engagement with both digital and real-world activities. Chapter 3. Why are parents struggling so much with this? How to adapt to parenting in a technological world. This chapter acknowledges the profound struggles parents face in managing their children's gaming habits. Dr. K highlights how modern parenting is vastly different from previous generations due to the rapid advancement of technology. Parents today are navigating uncharted territory. There is no precedent for raising children in a world dominated by screens, social media, and online gaming. Traditional parenting methods such as setting strict rules or using punishment often fail because they do not account for the psychological grip that video games have on children. One of the biggest challenges is the generational gap. Many parents grew up in a time when television had limited programming and playing outside was the norm. They struggle to understand why their children are so drawn to digital entertainment. The reality is that video games offer a level of engagement and social interaction that previous forms of media did not. Unlike passive television watching, gaming is immersive, interactive, and competitive, making it harder for parents to regulate. Another difficulty parents face is losing authority in the digital space. While they might have controlled their child's television viewing or outdoor playtime, they often feel powerless when it comes to online gaming. Children argue that they need to play to stay connected with friends, and removing games can lead to emotional meltdowns. Parents may also feel guilty, fearful of stifling their child's happiness or social life. The chapter concludes by urging parents to adopt a new mindset. Instead of reacting with frustration, they need to learn how to work with their child, understand gaming's appeal, and set boundaries that acknowledge both their concerns and their child's psychological needs. Chapter 4. The Moment of Insight: Assessing Your Child's Readiness for Change. This chapter explores the pivotal moment when a child starts recognizing the impact of their gaming habits. Dr. K explains that insight into gaming behavior varies based on age and maturity. Younger children, particularly those under 12, lack the cognitive awareness to assess their gaming habits critically. At this stage, they are in what he calls the pre-insight phase, where they simply enjoy gaming without recognizing its potential consequences. Their brains are still developing, making it difficult for them to connect their actions to long-term outcomes. Therefore, parents must take an active role in setting clear boundaries without expecting their child's buy-in. The key here is consistency. Parents need to establish limits and enforce them in a way that becomes a natural part of their child's routine, much like bedtime or brushing teeth. As children enter their tween and early teenage years, they start developing more self-awareness, but they often still lack the ability to self-regulate. Kay describes this stage as particularly tricky because children may believe they fully understand their situation when in reality they don't. This age group often exhibits resistance as they begin asserting independence without yet grasping the full picture of how gaming may be affecting their lives. They may argue that they have control over their gaming habits or compare themselves to peers who play more. Parents need to recognize this overconfidence for what it is, a sign of incomplete insight rather than genuine control. The best approach at this stage is to encourage reflection by asking open-ended questions that prompt self-examination, such as, do you think gaming has ever interfered with something important in your life? For older teenagers and young adults, insight levels can vary significantly. Some may already acknowledge their excessive gaming, while others remain in denial, avoiding difficult conversations out of fear that admitting a problem will lead to restrictions. This is where parents need to assess their child's readiness for change, using the psychological stages of change model, which includes pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Dr. K emphasizes that if a child is not yet at the contemplation stage, where they at least recognize a problem exists, pushing them too hard can backfire, leading to resentment and secrecy. Instead of imposing rigid rules, parents should focus on building trust, creating a safe space for discussion, and subtly guiding their child towards self-reflection. This way, the child can reach their own moment of insight rather than feeling forced into change. Chapter 5. Building an Alliance: How to Get on the Same Team. In this chapter, Dr. K stresses that effective parenting in the digital age is not about controlling a child's behavior, but about guiding them in a way that fosters trust and cooperation. He introduces the concept of alliance building, which is a shift in the parent-child dynamic from opposition to collaboration. Many parents approach gaming problems as a battle, using threats and punishments in an attempt to curb their child's screen time. However, this approach often backfires, pushing children further into gaming as an escape from parental control. The first step to building an alliance is understanding that gaming is not inherently bad. Instead of dismissing it as a waste of time, parents should take an interest in their child's gaming experiences. Kay suggests asking questions about the games they play, their favorite in-game achievements, and the friends they interact with online. This signals to the child that their interests are respected, creating an environment where they are more open to discussions about gaming habits. He even encourages parents to try playing the games themselves, not necessarily to become gamers, but to understand firsthand what draws their child into the experience. Another key aspect of alliance building is recognizing that children often turn to gaming as a coping mechanism for negative emotions. If a child is struggling with loneliness, academic pressure, or self-esteem issues, gaming provides a structured and rewarding escape. Parents who ignore these underlying issues and focus only on limiting screen time miss the bigger picture. To truly form an alliance, they need to be a counterpoint to gaming by providing an emotionally supportive and engaging environment in the real world. Instead of just saying, "Stop playing," they should ask, What else in your life makes you feel accomplished or excited? Dr. K also warns against approaching conversations with an adversarial mindset. Many parents make the mistake of turning discussions about gaming into interrogations, which puts their child on the defensive. Instead, he suggests using non-combative language, avoiding ultimatums, and practicing active listening. Parents should acknowledge their child's perspective, even if they disagree, by using phrases like, "I see why you enjoy this game," or "I understand why you feel frustrated when I ask you to stop." By demonstrating empathy and understanding, parents can shift from being seen as an authority figure, imposing restrictions, to being a trusted ally, working toward a common goal. Chapter 6. Communication 101. Learning how to connect with your child. In this chapter, Dr. K highlights that many parent-child conflicts over gaming stem from poor communication patterns. He introduces 4 essential techniques for effective communication: open-ended questions, reflective listening, expressing confusion, and going meta. These strategies help parents foster deeper conversations rather than falling into the cycle of nagging and arguments. Open-ended questions are crucial because they encourage children to express their thoughts without feeling pressured to give a specific answer. Instead of asking, "Are you playing too much?" which invites a defensive "no," parents should ask, "What do you like most about gaming?" This allows children to articulate their motivations, giving parents insight into their emotional needs. Reflective listening is the practice of repeating back what a child has said in a way that validates their feelings. If a child complains, "You always want me to stop playing right when I'm about to win," a parent can respond, "It sounds like you feel frustrated when I interrupt your game at an important moment." This technique reassures the child that their emotions are being acknowledged, which makes them more willing to engage in conversation. Expressing confusion is another powerful tool. Instead of making accusations, parents can express their thoughts in a way that invites discussion. For example, saying, "I don't really understand why this game is so important to you. Can you explain it to me?" shifts the conversation from confrontation to curiosity. Finally, going meta refers to addressing the pattern of communication itself rather than just the issue at hand. If every conversation about gaming turns into a fight, parents can step back and say, "I feel like every time we talk about this, we both get frustrated. How can we talk about it in a way that doesn't feel like an argument?" This technique helps reset the dynamic, making future conversations more productive. Chapter 7. Laying the foundation for boundaries, creating structure in your child's life. This chapter prepares parents for boundary setting by emphasizing the importance of structure. Dr. K explains that an unstructured life creates the perfect conditions for excessive gaming. Without clear routines, children are more likely to procrastinate, neglect responsibilities, and default to gaming as their main activity. He illustrates this with cases of young adults who struggled with gaming addiction after college when their structured academic lives ended, leaving them with no external constraints. The key to preventing this pattern is to introduce structure early on. Parents should create predictable daily schedules that include schoolwork, chores, outdoor activities, and social interactions. This doesn't mean banning gaming outright, but ensuring it has a defined place within a well-balanced routine. The goal is to make gaming just one of many structured activities, rather than the dominant focus of a child's life. Dr. K also addresses the challenges of enforcing structure, particularly with children who resist parental authority. He warns that simply imposing rules without collaboration can lead to rebellion. Instead, he suggests involving children in the boundary-setting process by asking them how they think gaming should fit into their schedule. Giving them some agency in the decision-making process increases their willingness to comply. Ultimately, this chapter underscores that structure is the foundation for all future boundaries. Before implementing strict gaming limits, parents need to ensure that their child's daily life is filled with meaningful, structured activities that provide alternative sources of fulfillment. Chapter 8. The components of a good boundary plan. Dr. K opens this chapter by emphasizing that boundaries should not be seen as rigid finish lines, but as flexible mile markers that help guide children toward healthier gaming habits. He explains that many parents struggle with boundary setting because they often set unrealistic goals that are too ambitious from the start. When these boundaries inevitably fail, parents either become inconsistent or give up entirely, teaching their children that boundaries are negotiable and easily broken. Instead of taking an all-or-nothing approach, parents should start small and build incremental success. For example, rather than trying to enforce an immediate, drastic reduction in screen time, parents should focus on making gradual changes that their child can realistically adhere to. One key component of a good boundary plan is specificity. Vague rules like less gaming or more outdoor time are ineffective because they leave too much room for interpretation. Instead, parents should establish concrete, measurable limits, such as restricting gaming to 2 hours per day after homework is completed. Additionally, parents need to anticipate potential loopholes and plan for them in advance. For instance, if the rule is no gaming after 9 p.m., what happens when the child is at a friend's house? If a child plays for extra hours on the weekend, does that mean they get less time during the week? Addressing these details ahead of time reduces arguments and ensures consistency. Another crucial aspect of boundary setting is defining consequences, both positive and negative. If a child successfully follows gaming limits, parents should acknowledge and reinforce that behavior with reasonable rewards, such as extra time on weekends or a family activity of their choice. Conversely, there must be clear consequences for failing to adhere to the rules. However, these consequences should be proportional and enforceable. Instead of banning gaming entirely after one mistake, a more effective approach might be temporarily restricting online play while allowing single-player games. This way, the child experiences a meaningful consequence without feeling completely cut off. Finally, Dr. K stresses the importance of adaptability. A boundary plan should not be set in stone. It needs to evolve based on what works and what doesn't. Parents should schedule periodic check-ins with their child to evaluate progress, make adjustments if necessary, and discuss any challenges they are facing. This approach fosters a sense of collaboration rather than authoritarian rule, increasing the likelihood of long-term success. Chapter 9. Engaging your child in the effort. In this chapter, Dr. K highlights the importance of involving children in the boundary-setting process rather than imposing rules unilaterally. He explains that when children feel like they have a say in decisions that affect them, they are much more likely to comply with the rules. Parents should approach the conversation with an open mind, avoiding the temptation to dictate terms from the outset. Instead of simply telling a child that their gaming time will be reduced, parents should start by asking open-ended questions about their gaming habits. Questions like, what do you enjoy most about gaming? Or, how do you feel when you have to stop playing? Can provide valuable insights into the child's perspective. One of the most effective strategies for engaging a child in the effort is to give them a menu of options when it comes to boundaries. Instead of setting a single, non-negotiable rule, parents can present multiple reasonable choices and allow the child to have input. For example, rather than saying, you can only play for 2 hours a day, a parent might say, would you prefer to have 2 hours of gaming each day or 3 hours on weekends and 1 hour on weekdays? This approach gives the child a sense of agency while still maintaining the parent's desired outcome. Dr. K also encourages parents to use reflective listening during these discussions. When a child expresses frustration about gaming restrictions, rather than immediately countering with reasons why the limits are necessary, parents should first acknowledge the child's feelings. Saying something like, I hear that you're frustrated because you feel like you're missing out when your friends are online, shows empathy and makes the child more receptive to further conversation. Ultimately, the goal of this chapter is to help parents move away from a power struggle dynamic and toward a collaborative approach. While parents still have the final say, engaging their child in the process creates a more positive atmosphere and reduces resistance. The chapter concludes with practical examples of how families have successfully implemented this strategy, demonstrating that even the most resistant children can become cooperative when they feel heard and involved. Chapter 10. Enforcing Boundaries and Dealing with Resistance. This chapter acknowledges that even the best-laid plans will face resistance. No matter how carefully boundaries are designed or how much collaboration takes place, children will inevitably push back when gaming restrictions interfere with their desires. Dr. K reassures parents that resistance is normal and should be expected. Rather than viewing resistance as a failure, parents should see it as an opportunity to reinforce consistency and model calm authority. To understand resistance better, the chapter introduces concepts from the Vedic model of the mind, which explains how different parts of the psyche react to change. The manas, or emotional mind, reacts instinctively with frustration and defiance when a desired activity is restricted. The ahamkara, or ego, reinforces identity-based thoughts such as "I am a gamer," making the child feel personally attacked when gaming limits are imposed. The buddhi, or rational intellect, is the part of the mind that can override emotional reactions and make reasoned decisions. However, because children's rational faculties are still developing, they struggle to use logic when faced with restrictions. Understanding this psychological framework helps parents respond to resistance with patience rather than frustration. Dr. K provides strategies for handling common forms of pushback, such as tantrums, negotiation attempts, and outright defiance. One key tactic is to remain emotionally neutral when enforcing boundaries. Parents should avoid engaging in heated debates or escalating conflicts, as this only reinforces the child's emotional response. Instead, they should calmly restate the agreed-upon boundary and enforce consequences as needed. If a child throws a tantrum when gaming time is up, the parent should not engage in an argument but simply follow through with the consequence. Another important strategy is to differentiate between genuine distress and manipulative behavior. Some children may claim that gaming limits are ruining their life or that they feel isolated from friends. While these concerns should not be dismissed outright, parents should assess whether they are valid or simply an attempt to gain more screen time. If a child truly struggles with social isolation, the solution is not unlimited gaming, but rather finding alternative ways to foster social connections. The chapter concludes with a reminder that consistency is key. Parents who give in to resistance undermine their own authority and make future boundary setting more difficult. By staying firm yet empathetic, parents can gradually reduce resistance and help their child develop healthier gaming habits. Chapter 11. Confronting and Evaluating Mental Health Concerns. Dr. K begins this chapter by addressing an uncomfortable reality. Sometimes gaming addiction is not the root problem, but rather a symptom of deeper mental health issues. If a child continues to struggle despite well-implemented boundaries, parents should consider whether an underlying condition, such as ADHD, anxiety, or depression, is contributing to excessive gaming. The chapter stresses that parents should not feel guilty or blame themselves if their child needs professional help. Mental health challenges are common, and seeking support is a responsible step. One of the most important takeaways from this chapter is that professional evaluation is not just about diagnosing illness, but also about ruling out conditions. Some children who appear addicted to gaming may actually be using it as a coping mechanism for untreated ADHD, which makes it difficult for them to focus on schoolwork or regulate emotions. Others may have social anxiety, using online gaming as a safe space to interact with peers without the pressures of face-to-face interaction. Identifying these underlying factors allows parents to tailor their approach more effectively. The chapter also provides guidance on how to approach the topic of professional evaluation with a child. Many children resist the idea of therapy because they fear being labeled as broken or sick. Parents should frame evaluation as a way to gain helpful insights rather than as a judgment. Using language like, "A doctor can help us figure out how to make things easier for you," can reduce defensiveness. Ultimately, this chapter encourages parents to prioritize their child's overall well-being. While gaming issues can be frustrating, they are often a symptom rather than the core problem. Addressing mental health concerns at their root leads to lasting improvements not just in gaming habits but in the child's overall happiness and success. Chapter 12. Challenge number 1. Video games and ADHD. Dr. K begins this chapter by addressing the increasing prevalence of ADHD diagnoses and how the condition interacts with video game use. ADHD, characterized by difficulties in attention span, impulse control, and emotional regulation, creates a unique challenge when it comes to gaming. Children with ADHD often struggle to focus on everyday tasks, but video games provide a structured, stimulating environment that keeps their attention locked in. The bright colors, fast-paced action, and immediate feedback of games offer an almost perfect solution for an ADHD brain that craves stimulation. For many children with ADHD, gaming becomes the only activity where they feel fully engaged and successful, as it compensates for the difficulties they experience in school, social settings, and household responsibilities. However, while video games may provide a temporary boost in focus, they ultimately reinforce the negative symptoms of ADHD. Because games create an artificial state of high engagement, children with ADHD become more reliant on external stimuli to focus, rather than developing their own ability to sustain attention. This leads to a worsening of symptoms over time, as their brain becomes increasingly dependent on gaming to achieve the level of stimulation they need. The more they game, the harder it becomes to focus on tasks that require sustained effort, such as homework, chores, or even conversations with family members. This cycle creates a significant challenge for parents, as taking gaming away can result in emotional outbursts, defiance, or complete disengagement. To help manage this issue, Dr. K advises parents to first consider professional evaluation. ADHD is a medical condition that often requires structured intervention, including therapy, behavioral strategies, and sometimes medication. If ADHD is properly treated, the child's reliance on video games as a coping mechanism can be reduced. Additionally, parents can support their child at home by implementing executive function strategies, such as structured routines, checklists, and clear instructions for completing tasks. These strategies help reduce the impulsivity and disorganization that make non-gaming activities difficult for children with ADHD. The key takeaway from this chapter is that gaming addiction in children with ADHD is not simply a lack of discipline. It is a symptom of an underlying neurodevelopmental condition that requires targeted intervention. Chapter 13. Challenge number 2. Video games and autism spectrum disorders. This chapter explores the complex relationship between video games and autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Autism diagnoses have increased significantly in recent years, due in part to better awareness and diagnostic tools. However, many children with autism go undiagnosed for years, especially those with high-functioning autism who can mask their symptoms. Dr. K notes that ASD is not a singular condition, but a spectrum, ranging from individuals with significant developmental delays to those who appear almost neurotypical, but struggle with social communication and emotional regulation. Understanding this diversity is crucial when examining how video games impact autistic children. One of the defining characteristics of autism is difficulty with social interactions. Many children with ASD struggle to understand implicit social cues, such as tone of voice, body language, and sarcasm. In the real world, these unwritten rules can be confusing and overwhelming, leading to social anxiety and withdrawal. Video games, on the other hand, offer a structured, rule-based environment where everything is explicit. The game world operates on clear logic. If you complete a quest, you receive a reward. If you follow a specific set of actions, you progress. For autistic children, this predictability is comforting. Unlike the real world, where social interactions can feel chaotic and uncertain, video games provide a sense of order and fairness. Additionally, many children with autism engage in repetitive behaviors, a characteristic known as perseveration. Video games, especially role-playing or strategy games, cater to this need by offering repetitive tasks with clear objectives. Some autistic children hyper-focus on specific games, spending hours mastering every detail, which can further isolate them from real-world activities. While gaming provides a safe space for autistic children to socialize, often through online multiplayer communities, it can also reinforce their tendency to avoid face-to-face interactions. Dr. K emphasizes that parents need to set clear boundaries while considering their child's unique needs. Unlike neurotypical children, autistic children may struggle with open-ended questions or abstract reasoning, making conversations about screen time limits challenging. Parents should use concrete, specific guidelines rather than vague restrictions. Additionally, introducing changes gradually rather than abruptly cutting off gaming is crucial for children on the spectrum, as they often have difficulty adjusting to sudden shifts in routine. The chapter concludes with the recommendation that parents seek professional guidance if they suspect their child has undiagnosed ASD, as proper support can help children develop healthier social skills outside of gaming. Chapter 14. Challenge number 3. Video games and depression or anxiety. Dr. K turns his focus to the link between video games and mental health, particularly depression and anxiety. He begins by explaining that while mood swings and emotional ups and downs are a normal part of adolescence, persistent negative feelings, social withdrawal, and a loss of interest in previously enjoyed activities may indicate clinical depression. Many parents struggle to differentiate between typical teenage behavior and signs of a deeper mental health issue. One of the key indicators of depression is anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure from activities that once brought joy. Video games can be especially enticing for children struggling with depression because they provide an artificial sense of achievement and escapism. A depressed child may feel worthless in their real life, but can log into a game and become a powerful hero, a respected strategist, or a skilled competitor. In these virtual worlds, they receive constant reinforcement, which temporarily alleviates feelings of inadequacy. However, this relief is short-lived. Once the game is turned off, the underlying negative emotions return, often stronger than before. Anxiety, on the other hand, creates a different set of challenges. Many children with anxiety use video games as a way to avoid stressful situations such as school, social gatherings, or difficult conversations. Gaming provides a controlled environment where they can escape real-world pressures. However, avoidance only reinforces anxiety in the long run. The more a child retreats into gaming, the more their real-world coping skills deteriorate, making everyday interactions even more intimidating. Dr. K stresses that parents should not simply take away gaming in an attempt to fix the issue, as this can lead to increased distress and resentment. Instead, they should focus on building an alliance with their child, engaging in open-ended discussions about their feelings, and considering professional mental health support. Therapy, social engagement, and structured activities that offer real-world fulfillment are crucial in helping children with depression and anxiety break free from excessive gaming dependence. Chapter 15. Challenge number 4. Video games and marijuana use. The final chapter in this section addresses the growing concern of video game addiction overlapping with substance use, particularly marijuana. Dr. K explains that there is a significant comorbidity between gaming addiction and marijuana use, with around 30% of gaming addicts also engaging in cannabis consumption. This connection is partly due to shared neurochemical effects. Both gaming and marijuana stimulate the brain's dopamine system, providing temporary pleasure while reducing stress and anxiety. However, this creates a dangerous cycle where individuals increasingly rely on external substances and activities to regulate their emotions. Marijuana use among adolescents has become more common, partly due to increased legalization and the availability of cannabis products such as edibles and vape pens. Gamers, in particular, are vulnerable because marijuana enhances sensory experiences, making gaming feel even more immersive and enjoyable. However, regular cannabis use can lead to a decline in motivation, impaired executive function, and increased emotional dependence. Over time, gaming and marijuana together can create a lifestyle of escapism, where individuals withdraw from real-world responsibilities in favor of artificial stimulation. Parents who suspect their child is using marijuana in conjunction with excessive gaming should approach the issue with open-ended conversations rather than immediate punishment. Asking questions like, "What do you think about how marijuana affects gaming?" can open a dialogue without making the child feel attacked. Dr. K warns against dismissing marijuana use as harmless, as long-term cannabis consumption in adolescence can alter brain development and increase the risk of dependency on other substances. He concludes by encouraging parents to address both gaming and marijuana use as intertwined issues, rather than isolating one as the sole problem. And that's a wrap on How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. I really appreciate you listening. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and share. It really helps the channel grow. Even though I use AI for summaries, it still takes effort, and your support keeps this going. My goal is to get the channel monetized so I can keep bringing you more great audiobook summaries. If there's a book you'd like me to summarize next, let me know in the comments. See you in the next one. With much love and gratitude.